Loblaw plans to identify products sourced from the US with a tariff symbol. According to Canadian Grocer, shout out to them for their first ever Fast Five appearance, and Loblaw plans to slap a new T symbol standing for tariffs on labels for products sourced from America. Loblaw Companies Limited president and CEO Per Bank, the early frontrunner for best retail CEO name in human history, said prices won't rise immediately as a result of Canada's counter tariffs on U.S. goods like poultry, dairy, and produce. But when they do, on some items in as little as 1 to 2 weeks, he said, the new T symbol will help Loblaw's customers make informed purchases. Quote, we are pro-Canada and not anti-USA. We have many trusted U.S. vendors, but we will be responsive to our customer needs, Pearbank said. Customers can be assured that when tariffs come off, any tariff pricing changes will be entirely removed, end quote. Chris Creyts, what is the general approach you are seeing U.S. retailers take amid all this tariff noise?
Yeah, that's a great question. Dominating a lot of time for most of our clients right now.
Really?
I think at the
Okay.
beginning, scrambled to figure out what's actually impacted
Right.
as you think about working with vendors, with manufacturers, how their supply chains are impacted. The velocity of new updates on the tariffs. I feel like every day I get a new text that, hey, this has changed. You have the Canada-Mexico tariffs, you have the China import tariffs, you have the steel and aluminum tariffs. There's so many different levers. There's questions about how they'll be implemented. With the steel and aluminum tariffs, the way it's written, it's actually only on the FOB portion of the goods that contain steel and aluminum. So not just pure steel and aluminum goods. So there's lots of questions like how will these tariffs stack together? They weren't necessarily released in the most descriptive, easy to implement way. So I think there's been a lot of spin cycle trying to, number one, interpret what's actually going to happen. Number two, think about how it'll be implemented as you import products. Some of the good news here is, we've kind of been through this cycle before in tariffs. So there's a playbook that a lot of folks have written already in how to deal with tariffs. The other kind of tailwind, if you will, is a lot of folks have started diversifying their supply chains away from China, kind of as a result of the last cycle. So there'll be some less impact here. But the kind of universal approach that folks are taking or should be taking is, everyone's starting to look through their supply chains and figure out where there's going to be cost impacts. I think what the best people are doing is trying to have data focused conversations with their vendors and their manufacturers to understand what actually the cost impact is so that you're not taking, additional, call it margin seeking cost increases from your vendors. Cause a lot of times they can tuck in stuff like that under the guise of, cost of business has increased because of tariffs. So I think there's a portion of that. And then, everyone's thinking about where can I raise prices to account for this? Where do I have elasticity? Where do I not have elasticity? And then kind of on the far end of the spectrum, you have even some retailers placing, it's past now. So placed, front running orders to try and bring in lots of inventory ahead of these tariffs. So wide range of reactions kind of trying to navigate.
So let me make sure I understand that also. I want to ask you a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Would you say that generally speaking, retailers right now are assessing the situation versus taking definitive action yet until they have more understanding of what's in front of them, with the exception of China, where it seems like maybe people are taking more action on the rerouting of Chinese production? Is that a good summary, or what am I missing?
I think that's right, but there's work you can do ahead of time while you're waiting. So I think the work is happening, e.g., you can build models of here are all the SKUs that could be impacted, whether it's a 10% China tariff, now a 20% China tariff, you can modulate some of those things. So I think people are laying the groundwork to say, there's 4 big categories of tariffs that are out there now. Which SKUs do we have that could be impacted by these? And then building the model in a way such that, as certain tariffs drop through negotiations or certain tariffs increase, you have the groundwork to be able to simulate impact to cost and therefore pricing.
Okay, got it. All right, so let's switch gears here a little bit on this one because I think this will be fun. So, Anne, I'm curious what you think of Mr. Pear Bank and Loblaw's approach to this problem. What's your thoughts there?
Oh my God. It's so passive aggressive Canadian. I love it so much. And I do love the Canadians. Like, we're just going to put these stickers on and you can make the call. Listen, I think that Chris hit it on the head. Like, what's really important here is for retailers to be making sure that they have the most price elasticity to bring customers in the door, because ultimately I think that's what the biggest challenge is going to be. Customers are going to be more price conscious than ever, and so you're going to have to figure out, not like by putting these tariff stickers on. I think that's fine, whatever you want, how you want to message that to your consumers, but ultimately it's going to come down to price. And it gets back to, the conversation we had with Matt Povich from Ravionics last week of like, what are you doing to invest in pricing software and optimization so that you can be ahead of the curve and really give your organization the agility that it's going to need to handle the constantly changing tariffs, and just continuously offer your customers the best price possible, and give them the least amount of impact to their daily shopping.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ann. Yeah, if you're a pricing solution provider right now, you're loving
Oh
all
God.
this. I mean,
Yeah.
God, because the retailer's going to have to invest in upgrading those systems. That's funny. That's funny. I actually personally just think it's brilliant merchandising. Like, I give kudos to Loblaws, like, because it's just a smart thing to do. The art of retailing is taking advantage of situations as they arise, and that's what they're doing here. And by default, they're gonna push their private label products as a result of this
Sure.
too. And
That's a
so
great point.
so
Yeah.
I think that's what they're doing, and it's beautiful. But David, you get the last word here. What do you think? What do you think on what they're doing, or what do you think on the state of tariffs, like how the industry's reacting? You take the last call here.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone said. I think I want to take a little bit of a different approach here. I'm gonna think consumer first. So
Okay.
first with the Loblaw piece, it's another way to have another conversation with their consumer to drive loyalty, but then also, I'm not going to say trade down to private label, because in many ways for them it's trading up in margin. So I think that's another way for them to drive brand affinity. As it relates to consumer perception on tariffs, based on the research we've done, there is a little bit of an expectation that all prices are going to increase as it relates to tariffs from Mexico, China, and Canada. So similar to where inflation was a couple of years ago, where there is an expectation that prices will go up. And I think it's a question of where that will come from. Discretionary spending will naturally go down, but you also have to be mindful on price increases there. But on traditional household goods and dairy and daily products, the expectation consumers are having, like similar to eggs, is that prices will go up. And I think what will be interesting with retailers is, do you automatically pass those costs to the consumer? Where do you renegotiate with suppliers? Or even in certain impact, do you see an opportunity to increase price when actual cost has not increased? So do you, premeditatedly, I'm not even sure if that's a word, uh, increase prices to offset future cost increases via tariffs? And so I think when it comes to traditional food and beverage products and even personal care, consumers are expecting price to increase. Now, the question of how much that is and where that inflection point is, TBD. But it will be interesting to see that.
The other winner you had, Chris, you mentioned pricing software. Probably the other winner here is like discount and off price retail, right? Like,
Yeah, I was just thinking Walmart wins. Yeah, Walmart
and
wins in this world. They continue to win. That
yeah,
100%. Yeah, I mean, the other part to me is, like, I go back to Econ 101, that the expectations of inflation are just as important as the actual inflation, because one drives the other. And so, yeah, it's really interesting.